The first thing we should realize, which is literally blowing the mind of physicists all around the world, is that death is not a law of this universe. Death is a statistic. Now, what does that mean? I want you, if you will, to imagine ourselves shrinking down to the level of the cells in our body. Now let's shrink down further to the level of molecules. Now imagine going down even further to the realm of atoms. So we now see atoms as large as life, as large as us, all around us. According to physics, if we were that microscopically small, surrounded by atoms, you would see that atoms that are 15 billion years old from the Big Bang, they're as brand spanking new right now as they were 15 billion years ago. Because atoms never age. Atoms never decay. They don't grow old. The second thing you would notice is that according to Newton's law of mechanics, all physicists will agree, you will see these atoms, you will see them clumping together to create molecules, and that they will move both forward and backwards in what we call time. That according to the laws of physics, at the microscopic level, there's no time. Molecules can go this way, they can go that way, which has created what physicists call, this theory came into effect around the late 19th century, it's called the time reversibility paradox, which means, how come if atoms are immortal and never die, how come if there's no time, if molecules can go forward and backwards, and we're made of molecules, why don't we go backwards in time? Why do we only age, but we don't reverse and get younger? If the molecules that make up our cells come apart, and that becomes a wrinkle in my face, why can't it reverse and restore my skin, restore a heart, a liver, aches in the bones? It's physicists all acknowledge it is a paradox. It makes no sense. It's like saying, you have snow particles that make a snowman. Well, how could immortal particles not make an immortal man? How could particles that go back and forth in time not make a man that goes back and forth in time? It doesn't make sense. Something strange is happening, and to this day they don't know what it is. What Kabbalah says is that the parts that build us, our building blocks, they're immortal. But the forms they create, you and I, are not immortal. So the forms can come apart, but the individual pieces remain immortal. So please indulge me in a just quick little exercise. Let's just all pretend we are all individual atoms, and each of us is immortal. Now everybody please hold hands. Hold hands. We're now a molecule. So when atoms bond together and hold hands, they create a molecule. Now let's watch the molecule die. Everybody let go. The molecule disappeared, but the atoms are still here. So what the Rav teaches us is what happened is space came in between the individual atoms. There's now space between each of us. When we hold hands, there's no more space. When we let go, there's space. But what's driving physicists crazy, in fact, one of them even committed suicide. His name was Ludwig von Boltzmann. He was so distressed and upset with being unable to crack this paradox, he literally committed suicide. Look it up on Google. Anyways, this paradox, they realized, from the Kabbalistic standpoint, is not really a paradox. What do I mean? They found that the reason atoms let go, the reason the form comes apart and we grow older, is because of the second law of thermodynamics, which says, let's not get scientific, it says everything spreads out into space. So our molecules spread out into space, and therefore we grow older, right? Atoms let go, molecules disappear, and then our cells disappear, the cells that make up our body, our organs, etc. Everybody with me? Okay? So because of the second law, atoms spread out into space, but according to physics, they should be able to theoretically come back together again because there's nothing in the laws of physics that prevent molecules from reversing. Why don't we see it? So one of the riddles they came up with, one of the questions they asked is, if you light a match to a tree, if there's a forest fire, that tree will instantly, spontaneously turn into smoke and ash after it burns up. According to physics, why can't those same molecules spontaneously create a tree? There's nothing in the laws of physics that prevent those same ashes and smoke to recombine into the tree. Why don't we see it happening? It's like resurrection. There's nothing in the laws of physics that won't make someone who's already passed on, whose atoms are still in the universe, recombining instantly. And then they appear. Why don't we see it happening? So what physicists have realized is death and the second law of thermodynamics is not really a law. Listen carefully. It's about statistics. What do I mean? I want you to picture a puzzle right here. Then I have a computer screen, and I made a model of a 53-piece jigsaw puzzle, all assembled. And now we press a button, and the computer takes the model of the puzzle and takes it apart. Okay? So now picture all these individual jigsaw puzzle pieces randomly floating around. Everybody see that? Okay. If we want to assemble that puzzle together, the fastest we could do it would be to make 52 correct moves to assemble the puzzle pieces. So if it takes about a second to snap a piece together, in about 1 minute, the puzzle's back together again. Here's the problem. Statistics. I want you to take a guess. How many correct moves are there to make 52 with a 53-piece jigsaw puzzle? How many incorrect options? How many wrong moves are there, do you think, in that puzzle? Just 53 pieces. Several million? Who else? Okay, he has no idea. The answer, according to physics, is the number of potential wrong moves is greater than the number of seconds that have passed since the Big Bang 15 billion years ago. That's just with the 53-piece puzzle. So the odds of smoke and ash coming together to create the tree, it's not that it can't be done. The odds are you're not going to see it in your lifetime because of time. It's just so trillions upon trillions of years into the future. Now, that's for a 53-piece puzzle. Hang on to yourself. How about a man or a woman, a human being, who's made of not of 53 pieces of puzzle, but he's made of atoms. Each atom is a puzzle piece that connects to a molecule. There's trillions of atoms that make up a human being. So if a 53-piece puzzle has gazillions of wrong moves, how many incorrect combinations are there to reconstitute, to reassemble a man whose body has just disintegrated? If you just lose 53 atoms from your cheek and you get a little wrinkle, and it would take billions of atoms to make a wrinkle, but if you just lost 53 atoms, it would take longer than the number of seconds that have passed since the Big Bang. What are we to do? I mean, okay, so we understand now, physics says, and they actually modeled it. They did a model with just a bunch of atoms, and they showed that when an atom is when a group of atoms are together, given enough time, they will reassemble back into their original state. The reason we don't see trees popping up out of thin air, the reason we don't see dead relatives popping up out of thin air is because of statistics. The odds are against it. Enter Kabbalist Rav Berg with a solution. It's freaking brilliant. I want you to recall that picture puzzle. The Rav revealed not 14 trillion wrong moves. The Rav revealed one move. that will reassemble that 53-piece puzzle. Everybody see the puzzle pieces floating around in that computer model? The one move that will reassemble that puzzle is if you suck out all the space. Remove the space, the puzzle instantly assembles. Instead of exhausting all the wrong moves like we do in our life, trying to figure out how to get happiness, how to get our soulmate, how to solve our financial situations, instead of trying to calculate all these moves, because there's more wrong moves than right moves. Only one guy came up with the idea of Twitter. Only one guy came up with the idea of Facebook. How many other people tried different ideas? They weren't the right one. Instead of exhausting all the wrong moves, remove the space. And a puzzle will assemble in your life automatically. How do you remove the space? Welcome to this week's Torah portion. Nanotechnology is the essence of this week's portion. The greatest space that exists in the universe is the space between mind and matter. You see, we really believe mind and matter are separate. So you might say there's 3 levels every person on earth has to go through. The first level is called mind and matter, where we are under the false belief that we're separate from each other, that my mind is separate from matter, that I'm separate from my neighbor and my enemy. The second stage is called mind over matter. And usually when you start a path like Kabbalah, you start using the tools of the Torah, which were given to Moses for the one reason to help us achieve this level. When you start using the tools, you start experiencing mind over matter. Not all the time. Sometimes we get a miracle. Sometimes we control our environment. We control situations. Most times we don't, but we're striving for greater levels of mind over matter. Anybody know what the third level is? Mind is matter. That's the level of the Kabbalist. The Kabbalist knows there's no difference between mind and matter. The same way frozen ice is just another form of liquid H2O. It's all one. Now, the problem is, it's not an intellectual decision. Okay, I'm now going to know mind is matter. No, it doesn't work that way. Mind is matter is a state of consciousness, a state of purity. You have to overcome the space between mind over matter. Between mind and matter. That space is caused by one thing only, the human ego. The ego is what fabricates all the space in the universe. And that's why this path is only about eradicating the ego, because when the ego goes, the puzzle will reassemble automatically, because you're removing the space. How stupid are we? We defend our ego, and we're going to exhaust every possibility to try and bring the Messiah, to try and bring paradise, immortality, instead of just doing it instantly. Get rid of our ego. And now, even though intellectually I know I want to get rid of my ego, tonight I won't be able to. Someone says something happens in business, I'm going to lose my temper again. I'm going to get worried. I'm going to become fearful. So I know intellectually get rid of the ego. Mind is matter, is not intellectual, and nor is the ability to get rid of your ego. You're not going to think your way out of this, unfortunately. We have to undergo transformation. Which leads to this week's portion. This portion always falls within the 3 weeks. Why? The 3 weeks consists of 21 days. There just happens to be 21 connections that we make throughout the year. Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, the 2 days of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, the days of Sukkot, Shavuot, Passover. It totals 21. So what these 3 weeks really are is the removal of space. Instead of having to wait the entire year's connections are now condensed into these 3 weeks. Further, these 3 weeks are now condensed into this one portion. No space. The entire year is here right now in this Torah reading. How do we know that? The Kabbalists say the 21 days have day and night. So 21 days plus 21 nights equals what number? 42. In this week's Torah portion, the Israelites traveled to 42 locations. But their journey is not across physical space. It's a journey of consciousness. Each one of the 42 locations corresponds to the 42 letters of the Yana B'Koach. If you go online and you search, any rabbi around the world, any, religious institution, not one of them, for the most part, makes a connection between the 42 locations that the Israelites visited and the Yana B'Koach. Yet that is the secret for removing the ego, for removing the space, so that the puzzle pieces in our life can come together instantly. So what does the first line tell us? The first line, Aleph Bet Gimel Yud Tav Tzadik, it's about removing space, dematerializing matter. From now on, when you're dematerializing matter, think about removing the ego, which removes the space. Second line, Kras Satan, tear away Satan from your consciousness. Remove the source of space. It's the Satan, the ego, that creates distance between me and my neighbor and me and my enemy. Shut down that ego reactive impulse that creates more space. Nun Gimel Daled, prosperity, sustenance. Give to charity. When you give charity and you do acts of sharing, and that hurt, you diminish the ego. You remove space between you and somebody else. Yud Chaf Shin, return all of your cells, which are made of molecules, which are made of atoms, back to their embryonic state where there's no time or space. Again, you're removing space. Fourth line, about determination. You can go on the journey of life and let life destroy your ego, get it trampled on as you fight it every step of the way. Or you can do the journey that the Israelites do today and have the determination to say, I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to proactively allow my ego to get diminished. See, this is where we make a big mistake. We always try to be right, even with good intentions. You get into an argument with your husband or with your wife or with your kids or with somebody in business, and you argue your point, and you really have good intentions, not realizing who cares if you're right. If there's ego, even if you're right, you get nothing. If you're spiritual and loving, you get nothing. If you're reactive and you got ego and you want to win the point and you give up the ego and you find your ego in that situation, you remove space. But what do we do in business? We try and be right. We try and do the right thing. We try and think of good ideas instead of saying, no, business has helped me to find my ego. Where am I reacting? Where am I being selfish? Where am I losing my temper? Where am I being fearful? We're focusing on solutions instead of focusing on the problem. Don't look for solutions. They already exist. Focus on the problem. The problem is the ego. Remove space. Every time you get into an argument, you got to say, wait, I don't want to win this argument, even if I'm right. I got to find my ego. So if someone is saying something to me and they're totally wrong, and they're yelling at me and they're totally wrong in this one instance, I take it anyways. I don't want to be right. If I argue back, even calmly and proactively, if I argue back and I win the argument and I make my point and it's a good point and we shake hands, nothing's accomplished spiritually. If they yell at me and I just shut my mouth and I let my ego get hammered, knowing I know I'm right, but I got to shut up, the next day the business deal closes. The next day my kids are happier, my wife is happier, I'm happier. We have to start focusing on removing the ego, and you need that fourth line to give you the determination, because as soon as we leave, the second someone stokes your ego, I quit, can't do it. I tried. I know it's right, I can't do it. We need the next line, Chasin Kadosh, which is allowing us prophecy to see the future. Meaning, if you could really see the reward, if you could really see the result of allowing your ego to get squeezed, then you'd have the strength to do it. You don't see the result, so you fight. You want the instant gratification of winning the moment instead of waiting for the prize that awaits you. If you could see that prize like in a crystal ball, then you'd have the motivation, inspiration to let go. Yachid Gay, the sixth line, spreads the light, the Zohar, everywhere because the Zohar itself is the removal of space. Just having the Zohar remove space in your consciousness, in your head to toe. And the last line is bringing the future into the present. It's about the perfection and the final completion of the world. And if we just meditate to bring that moment into the present, we bring it into the present. So, everybody hold hands. If you want to remove the next 200 years, instead of having to wait and to exhaust all the possibilities of this puzzle called Mashiach, remove the space, the puzzle will reassemble, and just remove the space between the people beside you. Shabbat Shalom.